The best, and she's with ABC News. She's Ann Compton, ABC News White House correspondent. Good morning, Ann Compton.
Well, good morning. Where to start?
Let's start with this $2 billion that President Obama is asking for.
Well, let me tell you something. He finally found something he cannot do with his pen and his phone. When it comes to handling the immigration crisis of tens of thousands of children with no parents, with no adults with them, coming over the border in South Texas and seeking, some of them seeking asylum, some of them seeking care, some of them trying to get to relatives in the U.S. The president says he wants $2 billion for more, better facilities in which to hold them overnight, more immigration judges, because by law, each case has to go before a judge. They can't just simply turn them around and send them home. And most important, I think, McGraw, he is asking for Congress to change the law that was signed during the Bush administration that requires that kind of legal help and give him fast-track authority so many of these kids can be sent right back to the Central American countries where they came from.
Sounds like everything a Republican would want. Is there any opposition, and what's the criticism?
Well, I'm sure with immigration, there's nothing simple about it, and there will be those who say, let the kids in, take care of them, get them into foster care, get them to their relatives. But that's exactly what the parents back home in those three countries expect. And again, what the president wants to change is the law that was signed, as I understand it, during the Bush administration, which says these are kids. You got to take care of them. You have to do right by them. So the president will be making that argument. And interestingly, Joe Biden was just in Central America, and John Kerry will be there tomorrow for an inauguration in Panama. And the White House says he's going to sit down with the presidents of El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala to say, stop letting these kids be taken over the border. Tell the parents that they will not be allowed to stay. And then Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, is going down to the Guatemalan border with Mexico next week, saying, please seal the border.
How many kids are we talking about as of this point?
The numbers are kind of scary. There have always been maybe 1,000 or more that come in any given year, but it has recently exploded. I think the figure I saw for recent months was 52,000 unaccompanied minors coming across the border. The White House says that they are delivered there by smugglers who get huge sums of money from their families down in Central America to get them safely up through Central America, through Mexico, which is part of North America, and over into the Rio Grande Valley, where Texas authorities have to find places to keep them. And the law is that each one has to be seen by an immigration judge. Many of them are claiming that they need asylum because it's so violent back home. The Obama administration agrees that that's part of the problem. But none of this, even the things for the $2 billion, won't be happening overnight.
Yeah, and not just to mention, assuming that these smugglers are of the highest regard, and some are not being some are not being used for sex trafficking and prostitution. I mean, the whole list of things could be problematic.
The president, in his interview with George Stephanopoulos last week, said he tells the parents down there, don't send your kids. It's dangerous. Your kids might never get to the United States. They could be kidnapped for sex trafficking. They could fall off the train or fall off the bus on their way north, and there's no guarantee that they will ever make the way home. And he says outright, these kids will not be allowed to stay. Here's the downside of that. They don't have any track record of sending the kids back because they do have to take care of them until there's a way to get. I think the maximum number that's gone back in recent months is 2,000 out of maybe 50,000 who have come in.
All right, let's move on to this VA. The president is naming a new secretary?
The president had no choice but to look outside of Washington, somebody with clear eyes and clean hands who could take over the department. And by picking Robert McDonald, a guy who's made his career from an entry-level job all the way to CEO of Procter & Gamble, one of the biggest consumer product companies in the country. But he also happened to go to West Point and spend 5 years in the 82nd Airborne. So the guy's got a good reputation outside of Washington. It may not be enough, even if the Senate quickly approves him. The House chairman of the House Veterans Affairs, which does not get a vote on it, has already issued a statement saying it's not enough. You got a clean house over there. Heads have got to roll. The agency is so broken that those who have been running it need to be fired.
And Compton, while we have you just a moment longer, the Supreme Court makes a couple of big announcements today. Any news coming out of the White House on those?
Well, the White House has long argued on Obamacare that it is a sense of fairness to all employees that when you work for a company or for any organization, they should offer you health insurance that includes contraceptive care, even for like the Catholic school system, which may be run by Catholics who disapprove of contraceptive, but have people of all different religions working for them. The Hobby Lobby case is the main one expected today. It's a private company, and the owners of the company don't like contraceptive services and don't want to provide it and are saying their rights are being infringed. The court is going to have to decide whether a private employer can claim it's kind of like a religion and it shouldn't have to provide something. So it's a really interesting freedom of religion case, and it will only one place to solve it, and that's the Supreme Court.
We'll wait and watch and see what they say. Ann Compton, great as always. Thanks for checking in.
Always a pleasure, McGraw. Thank you.
Ann Compton, ABC News White House correspondent. We should also say that ABC News recently won the Edward R. Murrow Award for overall journalistic excellence, and ABC News is our national source, and we're thrilled to be a part of the